Well, what's going on, you guys? Riley here. Today we are doing the 1-year ownership review on my 2017 Camaro ZL1. So I've had this car for actually just over a year now, which is the longest I've kept a car in quite a while. So today I figured we would talk about just how this car has done over the past 12,000 miles in 12 months of ownership. So I bought this car last July with about 5,400 miles on it. Currently it sits here with 17,400 miles on it. So definitely been driving it, putting some use on it. This is my daily driver. So every single day I drive this car. It is a 6-speed manual, LT4, 6.2 liter supercharged car. If you're not familiar, 650 horsepower, 650 pound-feet of torque. And this also happens to be the second 6th-gen Camaro that I have owned. So previously I owned a SS1LE car, which is similar handling characteristics as the ZL1, just doesn't have the supercharger. So that was also a fantastic car. I think on that car I had just over 10,000 miles. So collectively, just about 24-ish thousand miles on the 6th-gen Camaro platform. So hopefully today I can inform you guys on some things that I like, dislike, and how it has been to own and live with. So I figured we'd start off by talking about what have I done to this car. So a couple things, very small. This car is bone stock in terms of performance and things like that. It does have a Corsa Performance Extreme Plus catback exhaust on it, which is their axle back, and then a double X pipe. So it's got nice exhaust on it, which sounds like this. And also it has a Rotofab cold air intake, which basically I just did that to get a little bit more supercharger whine out of the supercharger. Aside from that, everything else is pretty much bone stock. It doesn't have a tune or anything like that on it. LED side markers from Diode Dynamics, the black and clear tail lights and third brake lights from the ZL1 1LE, and some vinyl wraps on the hood, roof, spoiler. And I mean, other than that, I really haven't done all that much to this car because quite frankly, it just doesn't need it. So if you happen to find yourself in the market for a 6th-gen ZL1 Camaro, what should you look out for? Well, this actually happens to be one of the very, very early model ZL1s, one of the first ones off the assembly line. And thankfully, I've actually had zero issues with it aside from a squeaky clutch pedal, which that was just kind of replaced and now it's good to go. With that being said, some of the early production ZL1s had some issues with their oil pumps failing. So I would say that is one thing you can't necessarily look out for. It's just something more to be aware of. You can do a Google search or a search on the forums for ZL1 oil pump failure. There will be some stuff that will come up. So I advise you, if you're in the market for one of these, at least just make yourself aware of that. Other problems, quote unquote, with the car, lots of brake dust, lots of brake squealing with the brakes. So that's always annoying. And then I guess the biggest daily, day-to-day flaw with this car, or not necessarily flaw, but just thing that's kind of annoying. So these seats here are lovely Recaro racing seats, which have heated and cooled functions in them, but the bolstering there on the sides, as well as on, well, I guess on both sides, bottom and torso, are a bit of a pain to get in and out of with this massive door in a parking lot. So if you're in a parking lot, if you're in your garage at your house, it can be a bit of a challenge to gracefully get in and out of your car. It's not the most comfortable. Once you're inside the car, it feels great. But that's one of the things that always annoys me, is getting in and out of the car. I'm always like, oh boy, here we go. Got to brace myself for this one. Also, just a personal preference thing. So every ZL1 Camaro will have the suede microfiber steering wheel and shift knob to kind of go with the whole suede theme on the inside of these cars. Personally, I don't really like that because it starts to deteriorate over time. If you might be able to see kind of on the steering wheel, just has a little bit of wear on it, and this is actually me keeping up with it with a brush and the proper things to take care of it. Also, you might be able to see there on the shift knob, it just doesn't look the best. It doesn't feel the best in my opinion. I would rather have leather, but it's one of those things that just comes with all of them, so you kind of have to use it. But I would say out of the entire interior on these cars, that is the only thing that I would really complain about. Everything else is awesome. They're super comfortable, have a lot of really nice features between the heads-up display, the ambient lighting all throughout the sides, a wonderful Bose audio system. These really do have a very comfortable interior for, you know, a 650 horsepower sports car. It's kind of the best of both worlds there. Touching on that, I do have a 6-speed manual car, and that's, once again, it's my daily driver. I have no complaints there. Whether you go with the 6-speed manual or the 10-speed automatic, you'll be pleasantly surprised. Either one is a great transmission. But honestly, guys, aside from that, this car has been fantastic. Like I said, it's my second 6th-gen Camaro, and I absolutely love it. I have no regrets about purchasing this car. It's one of the best bang for your bucks on the market. Even looking at the new market, there's still a great deal, but especially on the used market where you can find these things dipping below $50,000 for some really clean, low mileage cars. That to me is where this car really shines, is the lightly used market. It is perfect, and I will be selling this car in probably about 6 months or so to get the new C8 mid-engine Corvette. Nothing wrong with this car, just, you know, change of scenery, I guess. But with that being said, I think this will be one of the hardest cars for me to say goodbye to because it has been that good. If you've been following the channel for a while, I've had some really awesome cars here. I've had a Hellcat, I've had modified Corvettes, Mustangs. I mean, I've had a little bit of everything, but this is the car that kind of tugs at my heart. Like, man, as an overall package, bang for your buck, it's really tough to beat the 6th-gen ZL1 Camaro. Now, I suppose I'd be doing this video an injustice if I did not go ahead and show off that awesome LT4 engine underneath this lovely hood. So it's not the cleanest in here. It's my daily driver. Give me some slack. But there is that Rotofab cold air intake I mentioned earlier. That is the only thing touched in here. Now, a lot of people buy these cars and immediately just start modifying them because, quite frankly, it's a very bulletproof platform. So the LT4 can make tons of power with just, you know, headers, pulleys, things like that. The only thing you really can't do with these cars is you can't just immediately go put E85 in them because the fuel system does not support it. So if you plan to make real big power, expect to upgrade your fuel system pretty quickly. But with that being said, making, you know, a little bit over 700 wheel horsepower with these cars is pretty easy to do and relatively inexpensive compared to most of the other things out on the market. So in terms of modifiability, if that's a word, well, I suppose it is now, but in terms of that, it's great. You can pretty much do anything you want to these cars. They'll take it. Transmission is beefed up enough to handle a lot of power, whether you get the manual or the auto. There's really not a weak point. The only thing I would advise you to watch out for is just the oil pumps on some of the early cars, which thankfully mine's a 17. It was one of the first ones off the assembly line, 17,000 miles, and I'm all good, knock on wood. But if you plan to buy one of these and modify it, you should be good to go. The cars respond very well to modifications, and honestly, bone stock, these cars are plenty fast, as you're about to find out when we go for a little drive. Comparing it to the new C8 Corvette, this is how it does. Although the Corvette makes a whole lot less horsepower, if you do some YouTube video searching, the Corvette has been beating some seriously fast cars, and this is obviously a little bit more than that. So overall, bang for your buck. Love the 6th-gen Camaro, and whether it's the ZL1 and SS or even the V6 and 4 cylinders, just the overall platform and the Alpha chassis, it's one of the best platforms out there. Highly recommend you go out and take one for a test drive and see for yourself what you think about it. Now, in terms of things that I think get a little bit overlooked when it comes to buying a daily driver, so it's going to be the things that you use on a daily basis. So we'll start off here with the trunk. As you can see, I've got stuff everywhere in here filming this YouTube video, tripods, camera gear. There is plenty of room in the trunk once you go farther in there. The actual opening itself is pretty small, so that's a bit annoying. You can still fit golf clubs back here, so you can make it work. It's just a little weird at first. And then something else I believe is often overlooked is going to be your interior, which is where you spend all of your time. Everyone's really concerned with lap times and things like that, but how about where you're spending all of your time behind the wheel? It's a bit important, don't you think? So let's go ahead and hop in here. I'll fire the car up and we can go over some of the interior features. So when it comes to the interior on the 6th gen Camaros, like I said earlier, it's super comfortable, easy to daily drive. The two things that you might hear a lot about watching YouTube videos is, man, I can't see anything out the back. It's something you do get used to. Thankfully, these ZL1s do have blind spot monitoring, because as you might be able to see, that's a decent little blind spot over there. So that's something you get adjusted to. It's not that big of a deal. And then looking out the front, you'll see it's not the largest windshield either, but it is something you get used to. It's totally fine. The only annoying thing is if you're sitting at a red light sometimes the light will be like up here, and you kind of have to do this and look and see if the light's turning green or not. But aside from that, I mean, everything's comfortable. Where your arm sits, it's all of like a suede material, which again, I'd rather have leather, but oh well. Bose audio system is very, very good. The ambient lighting is always fun to kind of change around. You can change the whole feeling of the interior of the car just based on a few colors. So there is all of these colors that you can choose from. So I always switch it around, like once a week I'll go from red to green to blue to whatever, and it's always nice. Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. It's got, my personal car has the navigation, which I've never once used. So if you're looking for a car, you don't really need the nav, just use your phone. Bluetooth for your phone. The performance data recorder is something else my car has, and I've actually never used on here, which is like a built-in dash cam that overlays your speed and things like that. I've never used it, although I probably should, because it's a very cool feature. Other than that, everything else is pretty self-explanatory. Very easy to use system. The little screen up here that shows you all kinds of things, information. So total, I've got 17,421 miles on the car. And then I reset, so my trip A, this is when I bought the car. It's got 12,052 miles that I have put on it. Average miles per gallon, 17.1, and apparently I've averaged 29 miles per hour, so real fast. Fuel range, things like that. I mean, it's very easy to use, very self-explanatory. The rev matching feature for the manual transmission is very easy. It's very easy to learn on as well. So if you're buying like a SS Camaro, use that little rev match feature for the first, few thousand miles. That'll really help you learn to be a better manual driver. A little heads-up display, which you might be able to see right up there, is real nice to have. Heated and cooled seats, which, be honest, the cooled seats are not that great in this car. I really never use them. The heated seats I use maybe a few times a month when it's really, really cold. Those work great. But other than that, everything on the interior is pretty self-explanatory. The back seat does fit actual humans back there. It's not the most comfortable, but it does work, so it can be done. But overall, very nice interior. It's nothing luxurious by any means, but for a sports car with this power, performance, and this price range, it's honestly a really good bang for your buck. Very comfortable. You can do long road trips, be totally fine. 12,000 miles of ownership, and every time I do this, still puts a smile on my face. I'm all for modifying cars, but this is one of the few cars out there that really doesn't need anything. It's plenty fun just right out of the box. If anything goes wrong, you just take it back to Chevy and say, hey, fix it. It's just great. Any car that'll do 0 to 60s in the 3-second range, 3.5-second range, quarter-mile time somewhere in the 11-second range, is backed by a warranty, is comfortable, it looks good, it does everything well. To me, that's a damn good car, and this car happens to check all of those boxes, and it's one of those things, every time I get behind the wheel, it still puts a smile on my face. I still enjoy it. I still just love this car, and to anybody in the market for one of these things, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised as well. Now, without a doubt, 650 horsepower and 650 pound-feet of torque is 100% overkill. Because even sitting there, getting on it in first, traction control was blinking at me. Didn't cut in that much, but it still cuts in. You just don't need anything more than that. It becomes unusable at that point. And really, I hardly ever catch myself flooring this car because it has so much power. It's just a lot of unusable power. So with that regard, I would say, honestly, buying an SS or an SS1LE is kind of the sweet spot. You can save yourself a lot of money, and it's really just as much fun on a back road. Obviously, if you're into racing and that type of thing, this is a better buy for that. Or if you just like the looks and like the whole package of a ZL1, of course it has its upsides. But it's 1,000% overkill. And like I said, I really don't ever catch myself really beaten on this car. It's just my daily driver, and it's nice to have the power when you need it, but you just never really need 650 horsepower. I think a few years back, when I hadn't driven as many fast cars as I have now, that's when I was all about, I gotta find the fastest car I can buy because that's what is cool. And the older I've gotten and the more experienced I've got behind the wheel, I've realized that you can go out, please stop. I've realized that you can go out and have just as much fun in a car that doesn't necessarily make as much horsepower, but it's just as fun sending it down a back road. That's why people love the Miata so much. It doesn't have any horsepower. It's like a go-kart, but it's a ton of fun. Kind of same concept. You don't need the ZL1. The SS is plenty fine. It's still on the same chassis, which, speaking about the Alpha chassis, if you do buy one of these and you have somewhat of a steep driveway, the incline that you can go up is pretty solid. There's a good amount of ground clearance up there in the front. However, you will more than likely catch yourself on 3 wheels. That tends to happen quite a bit with this Alpha chassis because it is so stiff. So don't be alarmed if you catch yourself on 3 wheels going up a driveway or something like that. Now, if you're buying the car to track it, and this by no means is no track, but these are some of my favorite back roads and nice little turn, you can pretty much take corners at whatever speed you want, and the car's like, all right, which is another reason why I think this car's a bit overkill, because you can honestly have more fun on a back road with other cars out there that are not nearly as overkill as this, because you got to be going fast, and I mean fast on a public roadway, like heavily illegal speeds on a public roadway to get where you start to push this car's boundaries. Other than that, you're cruising on a back road doing somewhat legal speeds at like 5 or 6 tenths of what the car can do. But it's crazy to sit here and think that you can find these all day long in the low to mid $40,000 range, and to get this amount of performance for that amount of money is pretty incredible. Coming from somebody who's owned a 2018 Mustang, absolutely loved that car. The Camaro platform to me is just a little bit better. It's a little bit more refined, a better performing car. I like the torque and the way the torque comes on, whether it's the ZL1 or the SS. It just has a lot more torque and where you can really put your foot in it and feel that you're going fast, whereas the Mustangs, you really have to rev them out. And then also coming from the same guy who has owned a Hellcat previously, because a lot of people compare the Hellcat and the ZL1 because they're very similar in terms of straight line performance. This is a way better bang for your buck if you're into turning and that type of thing. If you're in for the more comfort, better daily driver, the Hellcat's a little bit better at doing that. It's a little bit bigger vehicle, kind of makes sense there. So really in the year 2020, there's like, I don't know, 10 really good options for cars that you can buy for less than $50,000 that have a ton of horsepower, a ton of performance. It's all a personal preference thing, and you know, you can probably talk to 10 different people, they'd all tell you something different. But coming from somebody who has owned 2 different 6th-gen Camaros and has put over 20,000 miles on them, I've got to say the overall platform is fantastic. They really don't have any issues. My 1-year ownership of this particular car has been fantastic. My 1 year with the last car was also fantastic. So I've got to say, nothing really to majorly complain about. The most annoying thing I can think of off the top of my head is the brakes squeal a lot because they have a lot of brake dust, but oh well. So I hope this video has given you guys some insight on the 6th-gen Camaro platform, also what I think about owning it for just over a year now. Absolutely love the car, as I've said 100 times. So if you guys are in the market, I highly recommend you go check one out. Thankfully, no real issues to report as of this video. We'll see if that holds up for the next 6 months, which I don't expect anything to go wrong, but I guess you never know. But as always, guys, thank you all for watching this video. Thank you all for the long time continued support, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take it easy. But the Alpha chassis is just such a good platform to... Well, these people are hugging behind me. Okay.